Welcome to the second video lecture on the skin and tissues. Now, the skin is the largest organ of the body. It covers the whole body and is water resistant. It has many other functions, but the main two is that it protects and shapes the body. There are two main layers known as the epidermis and the dermis. Let's start with the epidermis then, because this is the layer we can actually see. It varies in thickness depending where it's found, so it's thickest on the soles of the feet and the palms of our hand, and thinnest on the eyelids. Now, the epidermis, top layer of the cells, are constantly being desquamated or shredded. Now, in the lowest layer, so the fifth layer of the epidermis, known as the basal layer, this is where cells actually receive its blood supply, nutrients and fluids. And the cells actually can multiply here. And this pushes the cells up to the surface cells ready for the desquamation. So let's look at the 5 different layers of the epidermis. You have the surface layer, which is flattened, hardened, dead cells, and these are constantly being desquamated. You have your clear layer, which is denucleated cells, but they're not completely hard. And then you have your granular layer, where your cells have a distinct nucleus, but cell membranes are dying. The prickle cell layer, this is actually the start of the epidermis where your cells are living and your membranes are still intact. It's capable of mitosis here. And then the basal lowest layer of the epidermis. This is the site for your cell division to take place. The cells are living and it takes 28 to 30 days to move from here to become to the surface layer of the epidermis. Now, in this layer, cells contain a pigment known as melanin. This will give its skin its natural colour, and it's produced by the cells known as your melanocytes. Moving on to the dermis now, this is known as your true skin. Unlike the epidermis, it is connected to the blood and lymph supply as well as the nerves. The dermis contains sweat and sebaceous glands, hair follicles and other living cells. It's made up of connective tissue, which is your areolar tissue mainly, and tough and elastic tissue and white collagen fibres and yellow elastic tissues known as elastin. Now, your collagen's role is to plump the skin and elastin keeps it supple. Unfortunately, collagen and elastin breaks down with age. Now, your dermis contains your 8 main structures. Specialised cells, such as your fibroblasts, which are responsible for the production of areolar tissue, collagen and elastin. Your mast cell and your histocytes, which produce histamine. And your leukocytes, which are your white blood cells to help fight infection. The other types of structures in the dermis are your nerve endings, your sweat glands, hair follicles, sebaceous glands, blood supplies, lymphatic capillaries and the papilla. Let's look at the functions now then of the skin. Heat regulation, secretion, so the skin secretes sebum from the sebaceous gland. Now, your heat regulation helps with vasodilation to cool the body. This is when the body becomes hot, the capillaries will dilate, which allows more blood to reach the surface of the skin. This will cause your skin to look quite flushed and quite red. Sweating will then occur, and it will help the evaporation of perspiration from the surface, which will give an instant cooling effect. And then your warming, which is your vasoconstriction. So when cold, the body will protect itself by moving the blood away from the extremities to the internal organs to keep them functioning. The skin's other functions are absorption, because even though it's waterproof, it does allow some chemical substances such as essential oils or drugs to penetrate the skin's layers. This is done via the hair follicles and your sweat glands. The skin's other role is protection, to act as a barrier from body invasions. Eliminations, so some toxins are eliminated through the skin via sweat glands. Sensation, by working with nerve endings. And your vitamin D formation, to help with the formation and maintenance of bones. We're now going to be looking at the different types of tissues in the body. So let's start with epithelial tissue, known as epithelium. Simple epithelium is usually functions as a covering or lining for your organs and vessels. Compound epithelium provides external protection, for example, on fingernails, and internal elasticity for the lining of the mouth. Now, your simple epithelium consists of a single layer of cells attached to a basement membrane. These goblet cells are found in simple epithelium. These cells secrete mucus, and there are 4 types of simple epithelium. Squamous, which is a single layer of flattened cells attached to a basement membrane, and it forms a thin, permeable lining for the heart, blood and lymph vessels, and the alveoli of the lungs, which allows diffusion and filtration to take place. You then have cuboidal, which is a single layer of cube-shaped cells attached to a basement membrane, and it forms the lining of kidney tubules as well as some glands. The columnar simple epithelium has a single layer of tall rectangular cells attached to a basement membrane, and it forms the lining in the active parts of the body such as the stomach, intestines and urethra. Some of the cells secrete mucus and some absorb mucus depending on where it's situated in the body. Then you have your ciliated, which is a single layer of columnar cells which are attached to a basement membrane with hair-like projections. Your compound epithelium next is compound epithelium has many different layers and no basement membrane. It's formed actually from a combination of deep layers of columnar cells plus flatter cells towards the surface, and it protects delicate parts of the body. And there are two main types, stratified and transitional. You have keratinized dry stratified tissues, which is compound epithelium with a dry surface cells. It forms a dead layer such as your hair, skin and nails, and it is keratinized. The function of this keratinization prevents deeper layers from drying out and it protects them. Then we have non-keratinized wet stratified, which is your compound epithelium with wet surface cells, and it's found inside the mouth, the lining of the esophagus, and its main function is to provide lubrication. Now your transitional structure is similar to stratified epithelium, except that the cells are not flattened and can change shape when needed. It's found in organs that need your waterproof and expandable lining, such as your bladder. There are three main types of muscle tissue next we're going to be looking at, which is skeletal to help support and move the body, and it's striated and voluntary, smooth to carry out involuntary functions, and it's non-striated and involuntary, and your cardiac, which is heart muscle to pump the blood, and it's striated and involuntary. Your nervous tissue is arranged in bundles of fibres composed of nerve cells. These cells have long fibrous processes. The function of nervous tissue is to actually transmit signals to and from the brain. Your connective tissue next actually supports tissues of the body, and they have mechanical functions and they actually connect your active tissues such as your bones and your muscles. They're semi-solid, solid or liquid, and have fibres present. The function is actually to connect other active tissues, and there are 8 main types. In your work pack you will have more details.